My name is Zach, and I'm a terrible pilot. Yes, that is a proper confession. I'm a terrible pilot in Battlefield 5. Looking back at the long history of gaming, simulators was once my favorite type of games. 1990 version of Red Baron was superb, Microsoft Flight Simulator in all iterations, A10 Tank Killer, classics, and don't get me started on the racing games. Thing is, that is what made Battlefield so special when 1942 got out there. A mix of simulation and shooter, combined on vast maps with tons of players. Let's not get bogged down in history and nostalgia. Battlefield 5, today, what went wrong? I don't know, the flying never really clicked, and so I didn't. Including the time spent making this video, I have in total 13 hours in airplane in Battlefield 5. I barely get into the top half when counting score per minute in a plane. So can this be changed? Can I become an excellent pilot? This video will go through how to set up the controls, what our main target is going to be and what planes we are going to use. I'm going to explain the upgrade path I'm looking at and well, as my planes aren't very upgraded, you're welcome along on the ride. Before we get started though, if you find this video useful or funny, consider throwing a thumbs up, it really helps. Make sure to subscribe as well, so don't miss videos like this in the future. First of all, we're going to start with how to set up the controls. After all, it's there it all starts, and for me, that is one of the reasons for why I haven't spent more time in the plane in Battlefield 5. You see, my not so expensive setup for simulators simply doesn't work very well with Battlefield 5. I tried it ages ago and the game added a bit of a delay on the controls and I couldn't use all the buttons. So I still had to fiddle with the keyboard. To add up with the already not so good experience, it takes a lot of space. So I would have to commit 100% to flying, or I would have a stick in the way of the mouse and so on. Not perfect, not good. Therefore I'm going to go with a simple keyboard and mouse setup, which I never have used in the past. Flying with the mouse, it can be such a pain. The good part though is that there are settings that makes it easier, so you don't have to attach a spring to your arm for repeated movements to get pitch up, for instance. So the first thing we are going to do is bind space to pitch up and control to pitch down. With the left hand I can control throttle and rudder with default keys, and I can easily get 100% pitch up. The pitch up is what we are going to use in most scenarios, as a plane maneuvers better with positive G's due to the physics of the plane. Still, a button for pitch down can be useful sometimes as well, converting potential energy to kinetic, but I find it more useful in, for instance, 2042 when I fly a heli. I'm going to use the mouse to control the aileron to make the plane roll and to fine adjust pitch up and down when I aim. This is down to personal preference, but for some reason I find it more comfortable to not have inverted vertical axis when using the mouse. Weird. Then simply use the mouse to fire whatever weapon that is selected, and here we go. We can now do all maneuvers required for flying, although it will take some practice to get them fine-tuned. Simple math, there are 32 enemies scattered all over the map. Only a few of these will be in enemy planes somewhere, which means that there are at least 25 targets on the ground waiting to be obliterated. Also, it's a whole lot easier to achieve ground kills than to do dogfight. So therefore I'm going to focus setting up the plane as an attack plane for starters. Now, I'm no stranger to dogfight should the opportunity arise, but with very little time in the plane, I'm going to be at a disadvantage when facing most. Partly because of the potential skill gap, but also that most people that do dogfight have already fully upgraded the plane. They are likely to turn faster, go higher, and probably being able to endure more damage while being able to output more as well. 1v1 dogfight, I'm very likely to lose. So my idea is to attack ground targets, to learn how the plane works in Battlefield 5, upgrade my plane, then we can dogfight on more even turf. As I said before, I'm attacking ground targets. I'm not really interested in any flying fortresses, dropping heavy bombs in face of my opponents. It's simply not very fun. So instead, I'm looking at fighters with rocket capabilities. That means the Corsair when flying in the Pacific, the Mustang in other scenarios. As Brit I'm going to use the Spitfire, as German the Messerschmitt, and finally the Zero when flying for the Rising Sun. Looking at the UK, I'm going to be playing the Spitfire Mk5B as much as possible. So for starters, this doesn't really hold that much good with it. I mean, it's good looking of course, I like the Sharky and stuff, but for starters I only have two 20mm and, well, I have emergency repair, I have flares. It doesn't really provide a lot to go attacking with. But when we look over here, I can actually do some upgrades that is sorely needed. So the thing that I want most is the nitros, and that actually locks me to take the right path. So I have to pick the 50 cal, I have to pick the maintenance drills, and then go in the nitros, and finally I want to have the dumbfire missiles. Looking at Germany, my two options are the Messerschmitt Bf109G2 or Bf109G6, and similarly I'm going to go with a Bf109G6. Looking at the upgrade, I've already picked the armored fuselage, which I may or may not stick with actually. I already have nitros from the start, and what I'm looking at in this list is that I want 21cm rockets, because they are quite powerful actually. And I want to use the high altitude package, because then I can get out of dogfights by climbing. And finally, I'm very likely to go for the reinforced wings, because I find that more useful than the spawn beacon. For US, on the Pacific maps I'm forced to use the Corsair, on other maps I can use the Mustang. On the Corsair I'm going to use the F4U1C instead of the F4U1A. And I've actually leveled that to level 4 already, which is a bit nice. I'm not entirely sure on my path. This is actually something that I've done previously, so I'm kind of locked at least until I have upgraded fully. So for now I have two 20mm which I've loaded with high explosive thingies, and I have reinforced wings, and I have more rockets. I think maybe if I would redo this, I would probably go down the right path to get the manual supercharger. And I'm not really sure about the increased number of missiles compared to getting 5-inch. I don't care about dropping supplies, sorry, infantry, I just don't. And improved control surfaces, because usually when we fight with the Corsair, there are a lot of zeros, and they do maneuver better than Corsair. Looking at the Mustang instead, the P51D fighter, increased control surfaces, that is nice, high explosive 20mm, that is nice of course I guess, but I think that I would like to go towards the right side to get the manual supercharger, and then I would probably go for the 8 rockets. And down here I think reinforced wings is what I would use, whatever before doesn't really matter, because I can go any path. Finally we have the two zeros for the Rising Sun, and again we have one that is bomb centric, the A6M2, and we have one that is more rocket centric, which is the A6M5. And for that matter I want to go for the A6M5. These three upgrades I've done since before, which again is probably a path that I wouldn't pick right now, because I would like the manual supercharger. Anyway, I have the 20mm, I have explosive rounds, and I have reinforced wings. Going down here I want the classic, I want either the 8 rockets or the Mk27 rockets. Either of these would do, I think. And I guess going down here, well, it doesn't really matter in the middle section, I could use any one of them. And then finally I would go for the improved control surfaces, make this even more nimble, because it's quite nimble from start. The success of this challenge can be measured in a number of ways. First of all, my goal is to level all selected aircrafts to the max. But anyone can do that with enough time on their hands, so the other part lies in improving my statistics on Battlefield Tracker. Right now I score a mere 112 score a minute, and I have 0.27 kills per minute. As I'm aiming to attack ground targets, these should be relevant scores to look at, with a bit of caveat. Should I go more for dogfights, that will likely decrease the score a bit. It's kind of like when I'm playing as a tanker, I like to hunt other tanks, and that will of course limit the number of kills compared to carnage in Breakthrough. We shouldn't be blind about the scores, but it should still be reasonable to get into maybe 300 or 400 scores per minute. Making this video was quite fun actually. As a couple of final words, I found that when totally pinned down by AAs, it might be useful to get key points back with your team on the ground. My ultimate goal is of course to learn routes that makes playing works always, but while clipping this video I got in a situation where I could rather fast clear out a key point going by foot, as shown in the footage right now. Should be less needed in the future, I hope, but still, it's better than nothing. Cheers!